So this is Tom Reynolds, my colleague at Emmanuel College, and he's the Associate Professor of Theology with us. Thanks, Tom, for talking with us today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me, and welcome, everyone.
So as we're preparing, helping students prepare to begin their MDiv degree, Tom, you teach theology. What
Yes.
do you find students experience as most challenging about beginning to study theology during their MDiv degree?
Well, I hear stories about how people dread taking Theology 1, and it's really interesting. And I think one of the things that people find challenging is learning the language. It's like learning any kind of language. You have to take your time to ease yourself into the game, like a board game even, learning the rules, learning the terms, which can take some time. And some people find that challenging, intimidating, having big words like eschatology and things like that people have to learn to be able to articulate some of the things that Christian traditions have, put forth through the centuries. And so one of the challenges is just allowing yourself the time and space to ease into the language and go gentle on yourself, because it takes some time. You don't have to learn everything all at once, but with persistent and consistent care, and with your class and instructors, we're about helping you learn that language. And the benefits are tenfold once you learn the language. And I think part of the challenge too is unlearning assumptions about what theology is. Theology is this arcane, academic, impractical, abstract discipline, when in fact theology arises out of the very real, practical, embodied situations of faith. And so unlearning some assumptions is a part of that process, but people come to it with baggage. I think that letting go of and unlearning is a part of the journey. And I think that's what makes it exciting for me to teach theology, is to open up the questions and to see people have that aha, I thought this was settled. And that's sometimes a challenge too, because you might have convictions that you've held through the years that are indirect or only tentatively held because you're not really sure. And theology, it puts it on the table for you to consider. And sometimes that can be unsettling, but the reward is so rich because, the imagination then becomes expanded and you find yourself articulating things and reinvigorating your own faith journey. So that's what I find both the challenge and the reward of teaching theology in that way.
Yeah, you're making me think of a time I was teaching a theology course to students from Emmanuel College and from Knox College. And on the first day, everyone was introducing themselves, Knox being the Presbyterian school.
Sure.
And one of the Emmanuel students, when introducing herself, said, I'm so-and-so, and I just don't believe in original sin. And from the Knox side of the room, where that's a really important doctrine for Presbyterians, there was this gasp of, is that even an option? And she heard the gasp and thought, people still believe that? And so I said to them, by the end of the semester, I want you guys to understand why she doesn't believe it. And I want you to understand why they do. And this unsettling happening on both sides across those different understandings of theology was so powerful in that space of realizing the things that you think are just given are not for others, and how much we can learn from each other because of that.
Yeah, and the learning from each other, like you point out, is really key, because there are differences in the class. And learning from each other and even gently encouraging one another and challenging to open up the rich variety that is the Christian tradition too is a real gift, but also unsettling, as you talk about too.
Yeah. Well, it's like this little laboratory where we're actually doing the living together out of which theology gets produced in a new way.
Yeah, I like that term laboratory, because in a way, people think about, well, in the real world, as if somehow theology is this, classroom thing, but that class is the real world.
It is the real world.
People try on things with each other, and how you navigate differences and negotiate conflict is the real world.
I always think, did someone walk through a bubble to come in here? This is such a big part of my life. It is the real world. And it's like a place where you really get to work with those relationships and figure it out together. So you're already going into what the benefits are, but you mentioned the importance of the language, or the ways in which the language of theology can begin to feel really alienating. And we do see students over the course of a semester start to be more comfortable with that. And it can be hard to say, you'll get more comfortable, we promise. The more you practice, the easier it becomes. But what do you see then by the end of a course is the benefit of taking on that language?
Well, there are multiple benefits. One is the experience of wonderment, opening on to things that you've never even considered before, to see the real thickness and richness of the imagination that is Christian traditions. So there's that, where your own faith journey is opened up, and you're able to ask questions and articulate things that you never even considered before. And I think one of the benefits too is you see things like, well, for example, care isn't just a practical technique, it's a deeply theological act. And holding silence with somebody is a deeply theological act. And by the end, it's exciting to see students be able to see that and articulate the ways that, embodied care and worship even, and protest marches are deeply theological. Questions of justice aren't just about social transformation as if that's something else. It's a deeply theological thing. And for me, that's the reward, is to see this conversation expanding, to watch the imagination grow in students and myself as I learn from the classroom environment, from engaging these materials with people. So that's what makes it exciting. But I will say, by the end of the class, it's not a matter of having settled everything. It's not like 3 easy steps to doing theology, and once you're done with the class, okay, theology's over. But the hope is that people finish the class and begin the lifelong journey of thinking theologically, because ministry is a theological endeavor. And ministers are in charge of kind of being the theological vision keeper, encouraging congregations and people of faith to walk their own theological journeys. It's not just an academic thing, as we've already said. It's a faith walk, engaging faith situations and deepening the journey. So, that's sort of a longer answer, but by the end of the class, it's exciting to see some people really, they want to take more classes in theology. For others, I need to think about things some more. And this isn't really my cup of tea, but the hope is that people at least appreciate having tried on the language and articulating things a little more clearly than they may have before.
Thanks. Yeah. So when you think about students preparing to come in the fall, August, what's a good thing for them to be doing as they prepare to begin in September?
One good thing is to look at the syllabi of classes, if they're online, is just to kind of familiarize yourself with like the general flow, the arc of the semesters in the courses that you're going to be engaging. And maybe even look at some of the textbooks, just to kind of familiarize yourself with the language, but also the expectations of the course and the reading loads, to ease yourself into it, because the pace of academic studies can sometimes move quickly in the semester. So that's one encouragement. When I meet with my advisees, that's one of the things I always say. And for theology specifically, I would encourage people in different kinds of classes to start thinking about some of the theological questions that are, already there. And as you take History of Christianity 1, some of the early councils are theological wrestlings. What's at stake here? Why was it important? Rather than just facts to learn, to memorize, to jump through hoops, asking why this stuff is really important, and kind of prepares the ground for your other classes that you might take. But in August, I think looking at courses, looking at what's being offered, maybe doing a little dabbling in the readings would be a good idea, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I think the phrase you just said, what really matters, it's a great one. What really matters in the material, in the history, and also perhaps in that month reflecting on what really matters for you personally and theologically as well for the students as they prepare, really getting a handle on that.
That's really important. That's well said, because it's about vocation in a sense. What matters for you in your journey, and digging deeper as to why you're here and why this is important for your own journey is a good question to be asking, like you said. That's good.
Yeah, and anyone watching this video is taking this course right now and asking that exact question. So you're already well on the path, guys.
Yeah, well, I look forward to getting to know everybody, and we're in this journey together, so it's really good. And one thing I would say too is to really take advantage of your cohort. The people that you're in classes with are your friends, and they're on the journey too. And I think developing friendships, and I've seen it happen over the years. People stay in touch with the people they go through the program with, and they become lifelong companions in the journey. So getting to know one another and developing those relationships, even during a pandemic when we're online, there'll be other ways to join together and find that companionship.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Tom, for taking the time to talk today.
Oh, great to be with you.
Yeah.
All good things.
Bye-bye.